Honey, I'm home.
Hey, sweetheart, how was your day?
It was good. Had a student who refused to leave Target today. I practically had to drag them out of the store.
That must have been fun. I'm just glad you're home now.
Me too, I need a Mountain Dew. So what's for dinner?
Ravioli, almost ready.
Looks like there's a new episode of Family Feud tonight.
Do you want to watch it?
A loud breaking news alert flashed on the screen. The room fell silent. The breaking news report interrupted the quiet atmosphere, and Mr. Rence sat up straighter on the couch, the Mountain Dew bottle still in his hand. Reporter, VO. This just in, the popular drink Mountain Dew has been recalled from all store shelves, effective immediately. Mr. Rence froze, staring at the screen. Reporter, VO. The recall is due to concerns about a mysterious product dubbed explosive Mountain Dew. While it appears similar to the regular beverage, authorities are warning that it could be extremely dangerous. The factory responsible for manufacturing the drink claims they have no record of producing anything like this, and they have urged all consumers to dispose of any Mountain Dew products they currently have.
No way. Reporter, VO. The beverage is being recalled out of an abundance of caution until further notice. We advise everyone to check their homes for this product and report any strange activity. It could pose a significant risk.
Mr. Rence slowly lowered the bottle of Mountain Dew in his hand, staring at it like it was suddenly a ticking time bomb.
This is my fault.
He leaned back into the couch, thinking back to the experiment he had conducted months ago. He'd been working on a special concoction for emergencies, something that could give him an edge when his super speed van couldn't get him out of tricky situations. And there was no trickier situation than dealing with the school district's notorious serial killer teacher, Mr. Dugan.
Explosive Mountain Dew.
He had created the drink, and now somehow it had leaked out into the world. It was never supposed to be mass-produced. It was meant to be a secret tool, something to use if he ever had to escape one of Mr. Dugan's lethal confrontations. But now it was in the hands of the public.
Everything okay?
Mr. Rence didn't answer. He stared at the bottle in his hand, feeling the weight of what he had done. This wasn't just a bad day. This was the start of something much bigger, something dangerous. And somehow he knew Mr. Dugan was going to be involved. Suddenly, the sound of screeching tires and a loud crash interrupted her mid-sentence. The boys turned their heads just as Mr. Rence's van came barreling through the classroom wall, parking right beside the desks. Dust and debris flew everywhere, and Mrs. Jackson dropped her marker in shock. "Mrs. Jackson, Mr. Rence, this is the third time this month. You can't keep parking your van in my classroom." Mr. Rence, I don't have time to argue. Mrs. Jackson, this is an emergency. Mrs. Jackson, what emergency? Do you even have a license for that thing? Mr. Rence, I said I don't have time. He turned to the boys, gesturing wildly. Mr. Rence, Colton, Zach, Chris, get in the van. Now! Without hesitation, the boys leaped out of their seats and piled into the van, squeezing into the back. Mrs. Jackson, still sputtering in disbelief, tried to protest, but Mr. Rence was already revving the engine. "Mrs. Jackson, Mr. Rence, you can't just—" But before she could finish, the van was already peeling out of the classroom, leaving behind a trail of chaos and a very frustrated health teacher. Mr. Rence gripped the steering wheel tightly, his eyes fixed on the road. Mr. Rence, do you remember that time we fought Mr. Dugan on the roof of the White House? Zach, yeah. We knocked him off the roof, right? Mr. Rence, exactly. And do you remember how we knocked him off? Chris, you used that crazy drink, didn't you? Mr. Rence, explosive Mountain Dew. I made it to get us out of that mess. I blew Dugan right off the roof with it. But after we left, someone must have found some of the leftover drink, because now Mountain Dew's been recalled all over the country. Colton? Recalled? Why? Mr. Rence, they think it's dangerous. The factory doesn't know how it got out and people are panicking. But the truth is there's no threat. No one's going to find a bottle of explosive Mountain Dew in their homes because I'm the only one who has access to it. Zach, so this whole recall is because of your experiment, Mr. Rence. Exactly. They think it's being mass-produced, but it's not. This was just a science experiment, something I made for emergencies, and now the whole world is in a frenzy because I didn't clean up properly. Colton, so what's the plan? Mr. Rence sighed, his foot pressing harder on the gas pedal. Mr. Rence, we need to fix this before things get out of hand.
The van sped along the highway, the constant hum of the engine filling the silence as everyone wrestled with the same question. How had things gone so wrong so quickly? Mr. Rence's mind raced, replaying that fateful day at the White House over and over again. He had made sure everything was cleaned up, hadn't he? Yet here they were, with a nationwide recall of Mountain Dew because of his science experiment gone awry. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was all his fault.
Okay, wait. How exactly did this happen? You said you used the explosive Mountain Dew that one time when we fought Mr. Dugan. Shouldn't it have all exploded? How could there be any left for someone to find?
Yeah, that stuff was supposed to be a one-time deal, right? You blew Dugan off the roof with it. We all saw the explosion. So how in the world did someone else get their hands on it? None of this is making sense.
Maybe something didn't explode all the way. I mean, with an explosion like that, there could have been some residue or something, but even then, how would they connect it to Mountain Dew? That's the part that's driving me crazy. I cleaned up everything after we took care of Dugan. I didn't want to leave anything behind. But if someone did find something, even a small amount could have been enough to make them suspicious.
So what? Some White House staffer stumbles across some weird green liquid, freaks out and assumes it's Mountain Dew. That sounds like a stretch.
Not necessarily. Think about it. We were fighting on the roof, and when the explosion went off, debris went flying everywhere. It's possible something fell into a crack or got lodged somewhere out of sight. If someone found it later, maybe while doing maintenance or repairs, they might not know what it is. But if it still smelled like Mountain Dew, or if they saw a piece of the bottle...
And if they didn't know any better, they could have thought it was some kind of a dangerous product. They would have contacted the Mountain Dew company right away, especially if they thought it could be a security threat.
Okay, but that still doesn't explain how the Mountain Dew company just went along with it. I mean, wouldn't they do some testing first? Figure out that it wasn't their product?
Unless the people at the White House pressured them, it's the White House guys. If one of the advisors or security personnel says, "Hey, we found something dangerous, and we think it came from your product," the company's probably going to listen without asking too many questions. That's probably what happened. They wouldn't take any risks, especially if it's a product being consumed by millions of people. They'd pull everything off the shelves until they could figure out what's going on. The recall wasn't just about safety, it was about avoiding a potential disaster.
So you're saying the whole country's freaking out over a bottle of explosive Mountain Dew that doesn't actually exist, and they think it's mass-produced?
Exactly. But the truth is that was just a one-off experiment, a drink I made to use in emergencies. It was never supposed to get out. There's no actual threat, but because I didn't clean up properly, the world thinks there's a ticking time bomb in their fridges.
So, what do we do now? If the recall's already in effect, it's not like we can just tell everyone, "Hey, never mind, it's a mistake." They're not going to believe us.
Yeah, and if someone already found a piece of the explosive Mountain Dew, it's only a matter of time before they start digging deeper. They could find more, or worse, figure out how to recreate it.
We need to figure out who found it in the first place. If we can trace it back to the source, we might be able to get some answers. And there's only one place where that could have happened.
The White House.
Exactly. That's where it all started. Someone found the explosive Mountain Dew there, and they had to have been connected to the staff. If we can figure out who it was, we can get to the bottom of this.
And maybe while we're there, we can figure out how they even found the Mountain Dew in the first place. Look for clues, see if there's any residue left, or anything else that might help us.
And we'll need to be careful. If someone found it once, they might be watching that area. We can't just waltz in and ask questions. We've got to be smart about this. Then it's settled. We head to the White House, retrace our steps, and figure out who's behind this. If there's any chance of fixing my mistake, it's there.
Let's do it. White House, here we come.
As the van roared down the highway, the group's mission became clear. What had started as a freak accident was now spiraling into a nationwide crisis, and they were the only ones who could stop it. The van roared up to the White House, screeching to a halt just outside the gates. The once familiar sight of the stately building now seemed ominous as the group stared at it from the van's windows. The lawn was pristine, and security guards patrolled the area, oblivious to the chaos that had started here only weeks ago.
So, what's the plan for getting in? We can't just drive through the gates.
Don't worry, I've got a trick up my sleeve. Follow my lead.
They slipped out of the van, staying low behind some bushes as they made their way closer to the side entrance. Mr. Rence pulled out his phone, fiddling with a few buttons before pressing send. Suddenly, the alarms of every car parked along the White House entrance blared in unison. The guards snapped to attention, turning to investigate the sudden commotion.
Whispering sharply, "Go, go, go!"
While the guards rushed toward the noise, Mr. Rence led the group around the side, through an unlocked service gate that was left unguarded in the chaos. They quickly made their way onto the grounds, staying in the shadows until they found a quiet spot to regroup.
Okay, that was close. We're in, but we don't have much time before they figure out what's going on.
All right, what's the plan once we're inside?
Here's the deal. Zach, you're coming with me. We're going up to the roof to look for any clues. Anything that might have been left behind from the fight with Mr. Dugan. If someone found something, it had to be up there.
What about me and Chris?
You two keep watch down here. If anyone starts poking around or the guards come back, give us a signal. We can't have anyone spotting us while we're searching.
Got it. We'll keep an eye on things. Just make sure you find something up there.
Let's do this.
The group split up. Mr. Rence and Zach made their way toward a service ladder hidden behind a utility shed. It was old and rusty, but it would get them to the roof without being seen. Colton and Chris, meanwhile, found a small alcove near the hedge maze where they could see the main entrance and the roof without being too exposed.
You really think we'll find something up here? I mean, if there was anything explosive, wouldn't it have already been cleaned up by now?
Maybe. But if they miss something, it's our only shot at figuring out who got their hands on the explosive Mountain Dew. We have to at least check.
The two continued their climb in silence, the distant sounds of guards yelling at each other over the car alarms fading into the background. Finally, they reached the rooftop. It was just as Mr. Rence remembered, quiet, with a clear view of the city beyond. But now, it was more than just a rooftop. It was the scene of a mystery that had spiraled out of control.
All right, let's start searching. We need to look for anything out of place. A shard of glass, a burn mark, anything that could have been left behind from the explosive Mountain Dew.
If there's anything here, we'll find it.
Meanwhile, on the ground, Colton and Chris kept their eyes peeled for any sign of trouble. The guards had calmed down, returning to their usual patrols, but any slip-up could give them away.
I hope they find something fast. I've got a bad feeling about this.
We've been in worse situations. Besides, Zach's good at finding stuff. If there's anything up there, he'll figure it out.
Colton nodded, but his eyes remained fixed on the entrance, his nerves on edge as they prepared for the worst. Above them, Zach and Mr. Rence scoured the rooftop, their eyes searching every crack and corner. Finally, Zach stopped, his gaze locking onto a small dark spot near the edge of the roof. He crouched down, running his hand over the surface.
Mr. Rence, I think I found something.
Mr. Rence rushed over, squinting at the spot. It was a faint burn mark, almost invisible to the naked eye, but unmistakably the result of a chemical reaction.
This is it. This is where I used the explosive Mountain Dew to blast Dugan off the roof. Whoever found this must have thought it was some kind of dangerous substance.
So, they took it, reported it, and now the whole country's freaking out. All because of this?
Now we just need to figure out who found it and reported it to the Mountain Dew Company. If we can find that person, we can clear this up.
Let's get down and regroup with the others. We're going to need a better plan than just guessing.
The two quickly made their way back down the ladder, rejoining Colton and Chris just as the guards' patrol started to increase in intensity.
Find anything?
We found the spot where the explosive Mountain Dew went off. Someone saw it and reported it. Now we just need to figure out who.
Then we better hurry. Looks like our distraction's wearing off.
Then let's get moving. We've got a mystery to solve.
The group darted off into the shadows, their next move clear. Find out who was behind the report and put an end to the chaos before it spiraled any further.
As the group moved cautiously through the shadows, their nerves on edge, the tension thickened. They were making their way toward a side entrance to the White House when a sudden sound stopped them in their tracks. Heavy footsteps echoed in the quiet night, and out of the darkness a tall, burly figure emerged, one of the White House guards. But something was off. He wasn't moving like the other guards they had seen, his eyes locked onto them, narrowing with recognition. The group froze, hearts racing as the guard stepped into the dim light of a nearby lamppost. His face, weathered and hard, twisted into a sinister grin. Guard, as White House guard. Well, 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 look who decided to come back. I didn't think I'd see you four again after what happened the last time you were here. Colton felt a chill crawl up his spine. He glanced at Zach, who had gone rigid beside him. Chris and Mr. Rence exchanged a worried look. They all recognized that voice.
Wait, no way.
It's him, one of Dugan's men. Guard as White House guard. That's right. One of the guards loyal to Mr. Dugan when he took over the White House and made murder legal for those few glorious days.
What are you still doing here? Dugan's in prison. His little reign of terror is over. Guard, as White House guard. Mr. Dugan may be locked away, but I'm not. The White House? They have no idea I was one of his men. I played the part of the dutiful guard after Dugan's fall, and they never suspected a thing. I've been working here ever since, watching, waiting.
You tricked them into keeping you on as a guard? As White House guard. They think I'm one of the good guys. I've been keeping my head down, blending in. And all the while, I've been waiting for a chance to strike back. You four should have stayed away. Coming back here was a big mistake.
You're bluffing. If you really wanted to do something, you would have done it by now. Guard as White House guard. Oh, I have plans, kid. I just didn't expect to see you lot again. I've been keeping a low profile. But now that you're here, maybe I'll speed things up.
You're not doing anything. You think you're in control here, but Dugan's gone. You don't have any power left. Guard, as White House guard. I don't need Dugan to be a threat. I've got the White House fooled. They trust me. I've got access to everything I need. And now that you're back, you've just handed me the perfect opportunity to settle an old score.
We're not afraid of you. We've beaten Dugan before, and we'll take you down too if we have to. Guard as White House guard. You think you can take me down? You were lucky last time, but this time you don't have any tricks up your sleeve. No Mountain Dew bombs, no explosions. You're just a bunch of kids who got in over their heads.
Maybe, but we're not going to let you do whatever it is you're planning. Guard as White House guard. You should have stayed out of this. Now, you've made yourselves a target.
He reached for his radio, but Mr. Rence lunged forward, grabbing his wrist before he could call for backup.
You're not getting the chance.
The guard struggled, his face contorting with anger as he tried to break free. Guard as White House guard. You're making a big mistake, old man. Colton, Zach, and Chris stepped forward, surrounding the guard.
We're not letting you get away with whatever you're planning. You might have fooled the White House, but not us. Guard as White House guard. You're going to regret this. Dugan may be in prison, but his influence isn't gone. People like me, we're still out here, and we're still dangerous.
We're not scared of you, and we're not going to let you ruin everything again.
With a swift movement, Mr. Rence knocked the radio out of the guard's hand, sending it clattering to the ground. The guard snarled, struggling against the group, but Colton stepped in, helping to restrain him.
We'll tie him up. We can't let him warn anyone.
The group quickly subdued the guard, tying him up with some nearby electrical cords they found in the bushes. He thrashed angrily, but he was powerless against them now.
You should have stayed hidden. Now, you're going to answer for what you've done, just like Dugan. Guard as White House guard. This isn't over. Dugan will rise again, and when he does, you won't stand a chance.
Maybe, but not today.
With the guard subdued, the group quickly moved away, leaving him bound and gagged behind the bushes. They couldn't afford any more delays. Whatever was going on inside the White House, they had to get to the bottom of it, before more of Dugan's loyalists made their move. After leaving the subdued guard hidden behind the bushes, the group reconvened just out of sight from the White House. Their hearts were still pounding from the encounter, but now their minds were focused on the next step.
We can't just leave him here. He knows something, probably a lot. We need answers.
Yeah, he's definitely hiding more than he's letting on. If we're going to figure out who reported the explosive Mountain Dew and why, we have to question him.
What do you think? If he's one of Dugan's guys, he might know exactly how all of this got started.
You're right, he's not just some guard. He knows something. We can't move forward without getting answers out of him. All right, let's bring him with us, but we'll keep him tied up, just in case.
They quietly made their way back to where the guard was hidden, still bound and gagged. His eyes widened when he saw the group returning, and he thrashed against his restraints.
You're coming with us. Don't try anything or we'll make sure you regret it.
The guard snarled behind his gag, but he was clearly in no position to argue. Mr. Rence hoisted him up by his collar and began dragging him toward the van, with Zach helping to keep him steady. The group opened the trunk of Mr. Rence's van, and with some effort, they shoved the guard inside, still tied up.
You're going to stay nice and quiet until we get somewhere safe to talk.
A few minutes later, they were speeding down the road in Mr. Rence's van, the guard bumping around uncomfortably in the back.
All right, how do we get him to talk? Dugan's guys are usually pretty tight-lipped.
We need leverage. If he doesn't think we can do anything to him, he's just going to keep his mouth shut.
I've got just the thing. This guy's not like us. He's not used to my driving. I think if I crank up the speed, it'll scare him enough to start talking.
Yeah, that could work. He probably doesn't know what he's in for.
Mr. Rence nodded, pressing harder on the gas pedal. The van lurched forward, the speed increasing dramatically as they hit the highway. The guard, unable to see where they were going, could feel the van accelerating rapidly. He started thrashing again in the trunk, clearly panicked.
You feeling that back there? This van's built for super speed and we're just getting started. I suggest you start talking or I'll kick it into high gear. Trust me, you won't enjoy the ride.
There was a muffled groan from the trunk, followed by more desperate thrashing.
Last chance, talk or we go full throttle.
Okay, I'll talk. Just slow down.
Mr. Rence smirked and eased off the gas. The van slowed slightly, but they kept up a fast pace.
All right, start talking. How did you know about the explosive Mountain Dew and why get it recalled?
After Dugan went to jail, I knew it was only a matter of time before things fell apart. I needed something, anything, that I could use to stay in the game. So, I started snooping around, looking for anything that could give me an edge.
And that's when you found the burn mark?
Yeah. I was up on the roof, checking for anything that might have been left behind from Dugan's fight with you lot. That's when I saw the burn mark. It was small, but it was clear something happened there. Something that wasn't normal.
You figured out it was the explosive Mountain Dew.
I didn't know what it was at first. But then I saw a piece of the bottle. The label was damaged, but I recognized it. Mountain Dew. That's when I realized I had something. I figured if I could make it look like the company had produced something dangerous, it would slow you down. Especially you, Rence.
So, you wanted the recall to happen, you wanted to get the drink pulled so Mr. Rence couldn't use it again.
Exactly. I knew that without your little science experiment, you'd be vulnerable. The recall would create chaos, and I could use that chaos to my advantage.
You had no idea what you were messing with. The explosive Mountain Dew was a one-off experiment, not something mass-produced, but now you've got the whole country in a panic.
That was the point. If I couldn't take control like Dugan did, I could at least make life harder for all of you. I knew that without your little concoction, you wouldn't be able to stop me next time.
Well, you've underestimated us. We don't need that drink to stop you, or anyone else.
The van continued down the highway, the tension thick in the air. The guard had given them some answers, but there were still more pieces to the puzzle. They had stopped him from causing more chaos tonight, but something told them this wasn't over yet. The van sped down the dark highway, the guard still bound in the trunk. The tension inside the vehicle was thick, and the group exchanged glances, knowing they hadn't gotten the full story yet. Mr. Rence glanced into the rearview mirror, his jaw tight. He knew there was more to this than just getting the Mountain Dew recalled, and they needed to find out what it was.
He's hiding something. There's no way that his whole plan was just to get the Mountain Dew recalled. What's he really up to?
Yeah, I don't buy it either. He's working on something bigger. We need to get him to spill it.
All right, you've told us how you found the explosive Mountain Dew and got it recalled. But we both know that's not your entire plan. There's something bigger going on. What is it?
There was no response at first, just the soft rustling from the guard as he shifted uncomfortably in the trunk.
We're not idiots. You didn't go through all of this just to slow us down a bit. What's your endgame?
I already told you enough. You got what you needed. Anything else is none of your business.
None of our business? You tried to sabotage everything and you're still hiding something. If you think we're just going to let you off with that, you're dead wrong.
You can push all you want, but you won't get anything more out of me. I've told you enough to keep you busy. You should be happy with that.
You don't get to decide what's enough. If there's more to your plan, we're going to find out one way or another. So either you talk or I turn this van around and take you on a ride that'll make your head spin.
You think I'm scared of your driving? You already pulled that trick once. I'm not falling for it again.
You really don't get it, do you? You think you've got us on edge, but you're the one tied up in the trunk of a van, surrounded by people who are more than willing to do what it takes to get answers.
You're lucky we haven't handed you over to the White House already. They wouldn't take kindly to finding out they've been fooled by one of Dugan's men.
For a moment the guard remained silent, clearly weighing his options. He was defiant, but there was a flicker of doubt in his voice now. He knew he was running out of ways to hold on to his secrets. Mr. Rence sighed, easing the van off the highway and onto a quieter back road. He slowed the van just enough to make it clear that the calm was temporary.
This is your last chance. You talk, or I make this ride a lot more unpleasant. And believe me, I can keep this up all night.
The guard hesitated, the silence stretching on for a long moment, then he let out a frustrated growl.
You're all so stubborn.
And you're wasting time. What's the real plan?
The guard sighed, the defiance fading from his voice as he finally began to speak.
Fine. You want to know the whole plan? After Dugan went to prison, I knew things wouldn't be the same. But just because he's locked up doesn't mean he's powerless. His influence is still out there. His ideas? They've spread further than you know.
So what? You're trying to carry on his legacy? What does that have to do with the Mountain Dew?
It wasn't just about the Mountain Dew recall. That was just the beginning, to cause a little chaos. My real goal was to find something bigger, something that could destabilize everything. And you idiots led me right to it when you used that explosive drink.
You were hoping to find something more powerful.
Exactly. The explosive Mountain Dew gave me a taste of what's possible. Imagine if I could recreate something like that, on a larger scale, something that could wreak havoc, something the public would never see coming. If I could get that formula, I could finish what Dugan started.
So this was all about power? You want to pick up where Dugan left off and use something dangerous to do it?
Not just dangerous, unstoppable. The world's full of fragile systems, governments, companies, societies. All it takes is the right kind of disruption to bring them down. And if I could get my hands on that explosive formula, I'd have the key to tearing it all apart.
That's why you were so eager to get Mountain Dew recalled. You wanted to get your hands on whatever was left of the explosive batch, so you could reverse engineer it.
Bingo. But you were a step ahead of me, this time. Doesn't mean I won't try again. Dugan may be in prison, but there are plenty of others willing to finish what he started. And if I can't get that formula, someone else will.
We're not going to let that happen. You've made your move and now it's over.
We'll see about that.
The van continued down the road, but now the group knew what they were truly up against. The threat was larger than they had imagined, and they'd have to stop it before it grew any bigger. The van rolled down the quiet road as the group digested the guard's chilling words. The weight of the situation pressed down on them, and they knew they needed to act quickly. Zach leaned forward, breaking the silence.
We can't let this guy or anyone else get their hands on something that dangerous. He was ready to use the explosive Mountain Dew to destabilize everything.
Colton nodded in agreement.
Yeah, but how do we stop that? We can't just let him keep planting fear about Mountain Dew. We've got to do something.
Mr. Rence, his eyes still focused on the road, spoke up.
We need to get back to my house. There's too much we don't know yet, and we need to come up with a real plan.
Chris looked over at the others.
Yeah, we've got to figure out a way to prove that regular Mountain Dew is harmless. If we can do that, we can undermine his whole plan.
Mr. Rence nodded firmly.
Exactly. Let's get back to my place and think this through. We need a strategy.
A short while later, they pulled up to Mr. Rence's house. It was quiet, but the tension from their mission still buzzed in the air. Once inside, Mr. Rence headed straight for his living room, pulling out a whiteboard from behind the couch. He set it up in front of the group, grabbing some markers.
All right, let's figure this out.
He started scribbling on the board, drawing a rough timeline of events. Dugan's takeover, the explosive Mountain Dew incident, and the recall. He underlined the recall in red, circling it for emphasis.
So the guard's plan revolves around keeping people scared of Mountain Dew, right? If people think the drink is dangerous, he's already won half the battle.
Colton crossed his arms, thinking.
But if we can prove that normal Mountain Dew isn't dangerous, the fear won't last. The only reason it's being recalled is because they think there's something wrong with it, because of the explosive batch.
Chris leaned forward, eyes narrowed in concentration.
Exactly. We need to get our hands on the last remaining bottles of Mountain Dew that are still in circulation. If we can test them and show they're safe, we can prove the explosive Mountain Dew was a one-off creation. Something you made, Mr. Rence.
Zach nodded, adding,
Yeah, if we can show that the regular drink is harmless, the recall will collapse, people will start drinking it again, and this guard's whole plan to scare everyone will fall apart. He can't strike fear in the world if there's nothing to be afraid of.
Mr. Rence stepped back from the whiteboard, looking at the rough plan they'd sketched out.
All right, so we track down the last remaining bottles of Mountain Dew, run tests on them, and prove they're safe. That's how we take away his leverage.
Colton tapped the board.
But how do we find these bottles? The recall's already started, and most stores are pulling them off the shelves.
Mr. Rence thought for a moment, then a small smile crept onto his face.
There are still a few places that don't exactly follow recall procedures right away. Small convenience stores, gas stations, places like that. We start there.
Chris nodded.
And if we're fast, we can gather enough bottles to test and prove it's safe before his plan spreads any further.
Mr. Rence capped the marker with a snap.
All right then, let's get moving. If we can pull this off, we'll stop him before he causes any more damage.
The group stood, their determination clear. With a plan in place, they had their next step, and the race to stop the guard's twisted plot was on. The group rushed back out of Mr. Rence's house, the door slamming behind them as they piled into the van, their urgency palpable. As the van roared to life, Colton turned to the others, the adrenaline still pumping through him.
We have to move fast. The longer we wait, the more Mountain Dew gets pulled off the shelves.
Zach, sitting beside him, nodded.
Yeah, and if we can't find any, we're screwed. We need at least one bottle to run tests on, or we've got nothing to prove the drink is safe.
Mr. Rence kept his hands steady on the wheel, his focus razor sharp.
I know a few places around here that might still have some. Small convenience stores don't always act quickly with recalls. It's our best shot.
Chris leaned forward from the back seat, glancing at Mr. Rence.
Even if we find a bottle, we're going to need to prove it's completely normal. Can you run the tests yourself?
Mr. Rence gave a quick nod.
Yeah, I've got everything we need back at my place. We just need one uncontaminated bottle of regular Mountain Dew. That'll be enough to show that the explosive batch was my creation and nothing to do with the actual product.
The van screeched to a halt as they pulled into the parking lot of a small, rundown convenience store. The sign above the door flickered, half of the letters burned out. It didn't exactly inspire confidence, but it was exactly the kind of place that might still have what they were looking for. Colton, Zach, Chris, and Mr. Rence jumped out of the van and rushed inside, the bell above the door jingling as they entered. The store was dimly lit, and the shelves were sparsely stocked. They quickly made their way to the back where the drinks were kept. Colton scanned the shelves, his heart sinking as he saw only empty spaces where the Mountain Dew should have been.
It's not here.
Zach opened the door to one of the coolers and rummaged around, pushing aside other soda cans.
Nothing here either. They must have already pulled it off the shelves.
Chris turned to the others, his face tight with disappointment.
We're wasting time. If this place doesn't have it, we need to keep moving.
Mr. Rence nodded, already heading for the door.
Let's go. There's a gas station a few miles from here. They might still have some.
The group rushed back to the van and sped off down the road. The tension inside the vehicle was palpable, the ticking clock on their mission feeling more real with every passing minute. They pulled into the gas station, the lights of the pumps casting a harsh glow across the empty parking lot. This time, they didn't waste a second, bolting out of the van and rushing inside. The store clerk barely looked up as they made a beeline for the drink aisle. Colton's heart raced as they approached the cooler. He scanned the shelves, his eyes locking onto the familiar green bottle on the bottom shelf.
There!
He lunged forward and pulled the bottle out. Zach grinned, a wave of relief washing over him.
Finally, we got one.
Chris looked at the bottle in Colton's hands, then back at the others.
This is it, right? This is all we need.
Mr. Rence took the bottle from Colton, inspecting it carefully.
It'll do. Now we've got something to work with. Let's get this back to my place and run the tests. If we can prove this is normal Mountain Dew, the whole recall falls apart.
Colton nodded, his grip tightening on the steering wheel as they rushed back to the van.
All right, let's go. The sooner we prove this is safe, the sooner we can stop that guard's plan.
With the bottle in hand, the group piled back into the van, the weight of their mission heavier than ever. They had a chance now, a small one, but it was enough. They just needed to prove that Mountain Dew was perfectly safe. If they could do that, they'd take away the guard's ability to spread fear, and his plan would crumble.
Hey, wait, hold up.
What now?
You can't take that bottle. I was just about to pull all the Mountain Dew off the shelf. It's dangerous. Haven't you heard about the recall?
Look, we know about the recall, but we need this bottle. It's important.
No way. I can't just let you take it. The recall's happening for a reason. You could get in serious trouble if you drink that stuff. Who knows what it could do?
We don't have time for this.
I understand why you're concerned, but you've got to believe me. We're not just some random customers. This bottle is the key to stopping all the panic and confusion that's spreading. If you let us take it, we can prove that there's nothing wrong with the regular Mountain Dew.
You're telling me you can stop the recall, and how exactly are you going to do that? You guys don't look like scientists.
We're not scientists, but he is. He's the reason this whole recall started in the first place. He made something that caused all this panic, and now we're trying to fix it.
Wait, what do you mean he caused the recall?
Long story short, I created something. A batch of explosive Mountain Dew. It was a one-time experiment, but it ended up causing a lot of problems when someone found traces of it. Now, the world thinks all Mountain Dew is dangerous because of that. But it's not. It's perfectly safe. I just need this one bottle to prove it.
Explosive Mountain Dew? That sounds crazy. And you're telling me you're the one who made it?
Yes, and I'm trying to make things right. This bottle is normal. If I can run tests on it and show the world that regular Mountain Dew is completely safe, we can end the panic and stop the recall. But we can't do that without this bottle.
I don't know. I mean, the recall's nationwide. If I let you take this and something happens, I could get in a lot of trouble.
Look, man, we get it. You're just doing your job, but this is bigger than just following the rules. The world's freaking out over something that isn't even real. If you let us take this bottle, we can stop all of that. You'd be helping us save a lot of people from unnecessary fear.
I don't know.
Think about it. If we're right, and we are, you'll be part of the reason things go back to normal. You'll have helped stop this whole panic. That's got to count for something, right?
All right, fine, take it, but I'm trusting you guys. If this goes south, don't come back blaming me.
Thank you. You won't regret this. We're going to fix everything.
Well, that was annoying.
Could have been worse. At least we got the bottle.
Now, we just need to get back to my lab and run the tests. Once we prove this is safe, that guard's entire plan will fall apart.
Yeah, he can't keep scaring people if there's nothing to be afraid of.
All right, down to the basement. We don't have much time. First things first. I need to compare the regular Mountain Dew with my explosive formula. I need to show how they're different, how my creation was never part of what people are drinking.
That stuff looks dangerous just sitting there.
It is. This is a highly unstable compound. It's not something you'd ever want to drink, and that's why I need to prove the difference.
So, what's the actual difference between the two? What makes yours explosive?
The key lies in the chemical composition. Regular Mountain Dew is just your everyday soda, a mix of sugars, acids, and carbonated water. But my explosive formula, this stuff is far from ordinary. This is where it gets tricky.
That does not look safe.
It's not. This is what makes my formula dangerous. This highly unstable reaction to certain chemicals. This is what creates the explosive effect. Now let me show you the difference. This is what's on the shelves. Safe, carbonated, perfectly normal. This, on the other hand, is my explosive version. Completely unstable and very dangerous if handled incorrectly.
So, if we can show that regular Mountain Dew doesn't react like that.
Exactly. We can prove that the drink being recalled isn't dangerous. The only dangerous substance is the one I created, and it's not in circulation.
So, what's next? How do we show the world the difference?
We'll need to run a full series of tests to demonstrate the safety of regular Mountain Dew. We can document the differences and show the chemical signatures are completely unrelated. But first, we'll need to prepare a proper presentation, something that can't be refuted.
Let's get started then. The sooner we prove this, the sooner we can stop the recall and that guard's plan.
The group gathered around as Mr. Rence started preparing the next set of experiments. With the clear evidence of the two distinct formulas before them, they knew they had a chance to stop the chaos that had been unleashed.
Mr. Rence pulls a fresh sheet of paper from a stack on his workbench, pinning it to the whiteboard. He grabs a marker and begins sketching out the rough outline of their presentation. The others gather around, watching intently. Mr. Rence, all right, this is how we're going to do it. We need to keep this simple and to the point. Nothing too complicated, just enough to make them understand that the Mountain Dew they produce isn't dangerous. We need to hammer home that my explosive formula is something entirely separate. He starts by drawing two large circles, labeling one regular Mountain Dew and the other explosive formula. Under the regular Mountain Dew circle, he lists common ingredients: water, high fructose corn syrup, citric acid, natural flavors, and caffeine. Mr. Rence, this is what's in their drink. Normal, everyday stuff. There's nothing in here that's remotely explosive or dangerous. We'll emphasize this first. Get them to realize that their product is entirely safe and has nothing to do with what I created. He moves to the second circle and begins listing the components of his explosive Mountain Dew. Mr. Rence. Now this is where the danger lies. None of this is in their production line. We have to make them see that my formula is completely separate, something I made in secret, something they never had access to. Zach, okay, so we lead with the ingredients, make it crystal clear that their formula and yours are totally different. Then what? Mr. Rence draws an arrow connecting the two circles. Mr. Rence. Next, we show them the experiment. A live demonstration will hit the point home. I'll run the same test we did earlier, injecting the chemical into both samples. The regular Mountain Dew will just fizz, while the explosive version will react violently. We show them side by side, so there's no confusion. They need to see with their own eyes that the Mountain Dew they make is harmless. Chris... what about after that? Once they've seen the experiment, Mr. Rence draws another box labeled conclusion. Inside, he writes in bold letters, factory safe, Recall unnecessary, Mr. Rence. We finish by reinforcing the key point. Their factory never produced the explosive version, and the recall is based on a misunderstanding. Once the employees see the difference, they'll start questioning the recall. We need to plant that doubt in their minds. If they can't see any reason for the recall, they'll push back. Colton. All right, so that's the presentation, but what's the plan for actually getting in? Like Chris said, security's not just going to let us waltz into the production floor with science experiments. Mr. Rence, we're going to have to be quick and strategic. We'll try to approach the workers directly. If we can get a few of them to listen before any supervisors or security get involved, we'll have a shot. Once the employees start talking, the supervisors will have no choice but to hear us out. They can't ignore a group of workers asking questions. Zach, it's risky, but it might work. Once they see the science, they can't just brush it off. Chris, and what if security catches on before we can do the presentation? Mr. Rence. If that happens, I'll take responsibility. I'll explain the situation and tell them everything about my experiment. They'll have no choice but to listen, but hopefully we don't have to resort to that. The key is speed. Get in, show the experiment, and get the workers on our side. Colton, then let's do it. We've got the plan and we've got the evidence. All that's left is to get into the factory and make them listen. Mr. Rence caps his marker and steps back from the whiteboard. Mr. Rence. Exactly. Let's get ready. We leave in the next hour. Everyone gather what you need. We're going to Pepsi headquarters. The group disperses to prepare. Mr. Rence packs up his equipment carefully, making sure the two samples, regular Mountain Dew and his explosive formula, are secure. The gravity of the situation presses down on him, but he knows there is no turning back now. The group gathers again, bags packed and nerves running high. They pile into Mr. Rence's van, the engine roaring to life. All right, this is it. Let's make sure we get in there, do the presentation, and stop this thing before it's too late. Mr. Rence, we're going to show them the truth. And once we do that, Guard's plan will fall apart. Let's go. The van pulls out of the driveway, heading straight for Pepsi headquarters. The tension inside is palpable, but it's nothing compared to the noise coming from the trunk. The guard, still bound and gagged, has been growing more agitated by the hour. Guard, hey, let me out of here! Colton sighs, rolling his eyes. Colton! He's been screaming like that for hours now. You'd think he'd give up. Zach? He's probably pissed that his plan is falling apart. He knows we're close to stopping him. Mr. Rence, let him scream. We're not letting him go until this is over. Guard, you can't keep me tied up forever. My plan's not over. You think this little stunt of yours is going to change anything? You're all going to regret this. Chris! Man, he's annoying. Can't we gag him better or something? Colton, he's just mad that we're going to prove him wrong. Once we show Pepsi what's really going on, his whole plan will be ruined. Zach, speaking of, how far are we from Pepsi headquarters? We've got to make sure everything's ready before we head in, Mr. Rence. We're about 10 minutes out. We'll go over the plan one more time before we arrive. Guard, you're all fools. You think you can stop me? There are more of us out there. Dugan's not finished, and neither am I. You'll see, Colton. We've already beaten Dugan, and now we're stopping you. You're just mad because your plan is coming apart, and we've caught you before you could do any real damage. Guard, you think this is over? You have no idea what's coming. I'll find a way out of this, and when I do, Mr. Rence, you're done. We're about to show the world the truth, and your lies won't hold any power anymore. You won't get another chance to spread fear and chaos. Guard, this isn't over. You haven't seen the last of me. Chris, yeah, keep dreaming. The van pulls into the parking lot of Pepsi headquarters, a massive, sleek building surrounded by manicured lawns and tall windows. The group falls silent for a moment, taking in the size of the place. Mr. Rence. All right, before we go in, let's go over the plan one more time. Colton, we head straight for the production floor. We need to get to the employees, the people who know the product and will understand the difference between regular Mountain Dew and the explosive formula. Zach, right, we start with the ingredients. Show them how the regular Mountain Dew is completely safe, just like they've been producing for years. Then we show them the explosive formula and run the experiment side by side. We prove that the recall is based on something that's not even in circulation, Chris's. And we make sure they know that the factory never had anything to do with the explosive Mountain Dew. Once they see that their product was never dangerous, they'll start questioning the recall. Mr. Rence. Exactly. The key is getting to them before any supervisors or security step in. We have to move quickly or they might shut us down before we can finish. Colton, and if security does show up? Mr. Rence. If it comes to that, I'll take full responsibility. I'll tell them everything about my experiment, but we can't let it get to that point. We need to convince the workers first. Once they start asking questions, the rest will follow. Zach! All right, let's do this. The group steps out of the van, leaving the guard still tied up in the trunk, his angry shouts now muffled by the closed doors. They scan the area, looking for the best way in without drawing too much attention. Mr. Rence. There's a side entrance by the loading dock. We should be able to get in through there without running into too many people right away. Colton, let's go. The group moves toward the loading dock, hearts pounding with anticipation. This is it, the moment they had to stop the recall and unravel the guards' twisted plan for good. Mr. Rence, let's go in, show them the truth and end this. With one final glance at each other, the group moves toward the entrance, ready to execute their plan and stop the chaos before it spirals out of control. The group approached the side entrance near the loading dock, their hearts pounding as they neared their goal. The air was thick with tension, and Mr. Rence adjusted the strap of his bag, feeling the weight of the experiments inside. Just as they reached the door, a security guard stepped out from behind a corner, his eyes narrowing in suspicion.
Hey, where do you think you're going?
The guard barked, holding up a hand to stop them. His posture was rigid, and his other hand hovered near the radio on his belt.
Should I do my thing?
Your thing, what are you talking about?
Colton hesitated for a moment before glancing nervously at the guard, who was now eyeing them more closely, clearly sensing something was off.
You know, my thing.
What do you mean your thing? We need to move fast.
Oh no, you don't mean that, do you?
We don't really have much of a choice. The guy looks like he's about to pull a weapon. We need to get past him.
Before anyone could protest, the guard's hand went to his radio, his face growing more serious.
I'm gonna need backup over here. It's now or never.
With no hesitation, Colton took a deep breath and let out an exaggerated sneeze. Except this was no normal sneeze. A large, slimy green wave of snot shot from Colton's nose, hitting the guard square in the chest. The sticky, gooey substance clung to the guard like glue, pinning his arms to his sides as he staggered backward, his radio falling from his grip. The group watched in a mixture of horror and awe as the guard struggled, trying to free himself from the massive, snotty mess now coating his uniform.
What is this? That is nasty.
Oh man, I can't believe you just did that.
Hey, you said we needed a distraction, right? Mission accomplished. All right, well, that's one way to handle the situation. We need to move before anyone else sees this.
The group quickly darted past the snot-covered guard, who was still trying, and failing, to free himself from the goo. Colton looked back briefly, satisfied with the results of his sneeze. The guard was completely immobilized, stuck in place by the thick green mess.
Looks like he won't be calling for backup anytime soon.
Yeah, no kidding. Just warn us next time, okay?
Seriously, that was a lot of snot.
They reached the side entrance and slipped inside, leaving the guard behind as they entered the building. The interior of Pepsi headquarters was sleek and modern, a maze of hallways and rooms leading to the production floor.
Okay, no more surprises. Let's stick to the plan. We're headed for the production floor. We need to find the workers and show them the experiment before anyone else catches on. Yeah, no more surprises. We're almost there.
With their path clear, they moved quickly through the building, ready to execute their plan and put an end to the recall once and for all. The group moved swiftly through the hallways of Pepsi headquarters, their footsteps echoing off the sleek, polished floors. The adrenaline was still pumping through their veins after Colton's unconventional way of handling the guard. But now they were focused on reaching the production floor. The staircase loomed ahead, and without hesitation, they began climbing, hearts racing as they neared their goal.
We're almost there. Once we're inside, we need to stick to the plan. No more surprises.
But as they reached the top of the stairs, they were confronted by a heavy, reinforced door blocking their path to the production floor. Zach, who was already feeling the weight of their tight schedule, stepped up to the door and rattled the handle. It was locked.
We don't have time for this. We need to get in now.
Mr. Rence was about to respond when Zach took a step back, braced himself, and delivered a powerful kick to the center of the door. The force of the blow sent the door flying off its hinges with a deafening crash, slamming against the wall on the other side. Metal clanged as the frame shook violently from the impact.
Zach, no! What are you doing? We were supposed to be discreet.
Well, we're definitely not discreet now.
Chris peeked through the doorway, his eyes widening as workers on the production floor turned toward them, staring at the door, now hanging off its hinges, completely wrecked. The sound of machinery humming and conveyor belts moving ground to a halt as employees paused to take in the sight of Zach standing over the ruined door.
Zach, we were supposed to ease into this. Now you've made sure everyone's eyes are on us.
Look, we didn't have time to waste. We needed to get through, and the door was locked.
Yeah, but now security's going to be here in seconds. We're supposed to be presenting facts and experiments, not kicking in doors like we're raiding the place.
I think we've got a bigger problem than security. They're all staring at us.
Hi there. We're, here to talk to you about the Mountain Dew recall.
Yeah, we've got something really important to show you. It's about the explosive Mountain Dew everyone's been hearing about. It's not what you think.
We're here to explain the truth behind the recall. We have evidence that proves the Mountain Dew being produced here is perfectly safe.
You guys just kicked down a door. Why should we listen to you?
Zach opened his mouth to speak, but Mr. Rence shot him a look that silenced him. He turned to the employee, his tone serious but calm.
Because we have something that can stop this recall and prove that your factory has nothing to do with the explosive version of Mountain Dew. What happened here was a mistake, and I'm the one responsible. Please, just give us a chance to explain.
The employee hesitated, glancing at the others who had gathered around. There was a murmur of uncertainty, but finally he nodded slowly.
All right, but make it quick. If security gets here, you're out of here.
Mr. Rence nodded, already moving to set up the demonstration. He motioned for the others to help him unpack the equipment from his bag. As they worked quickly setting up the experiment, the employees gathered closer, curiosity and concern in their eyes.
Look, I know we didn't exactly come in through the proper channels, but we're not here to cause trouble. We're here to fix it.
This recall is based on a misunderstanding. The drink you're producing is safe. It's something else entirely that's causing the panic.
Yeah, and, sorry about the door.
With everything set up, Mr. Rence took a deep breath, ready to prove the truth and stop the chaos before it spiraled any further. The group knew they only had one shot to make this right.
Mr. Rence took a deep breath, adjusting his glasses as he faced the group of employees now gathered around him. The workers stood in a semicircle, murmuring in curiosity and skepticism. The room had fallen mostly silent, save for the faint hum of machines still idling on the production floor. With Zach, Colton, and Chris standing nearby, ready to assist if needed, Mr. Rence knew this was the moment to explain the truth. He cleared his throat, glancing at the employees. Thank you for giving us the chance to explain. I know the way we entered wasn't exactly professional. He shot Zach a brief look, who gave a small shrug. But we're not here to cause any harm. We're here to stop something dangerous from spreading, and that something is the misunderstanding about Mountain Dew. The employees shifted, some folding their arms, still cautious. But they were listening. I'm sure you've all heard about the recall. The explosive Mountain Dew that's been causing panic across the country. The truth is, your factory, this production line, has absolutely nothing to do with that formula. The Mountain Dew you've been making is safe. It's the same soda that millions of people have been drinking for years, and there's no danger in it. One of the employees raised a hand, her face confused.
Then what's all this talk about explosive Mountain Dew? Why is the recall happening if it's not from here?
That's what I'm here to explain. The explosive Mountain Dew that's causing the recall isn't something your factory ever produced. It was something I created, on my own, in my basement laboratory. This was never meant to be mass-produced or sold to the public. It was a weapon, something I made to help stop a dangerous person, Mr. Dugan. There was a ripple of recognition in the crowd at the mention of Mr. Dugan's name, a supervillain infamous for his short-lived but terrifying reign when he took over the White House and legalized murder. Dugan had to be stopped, and I needed something with explosive properties to help us fight him. That's when I developed my version of Mountain Dew, using its naturally fizzy, highly carbonated properties to create a makeshift bomb. You see, Mountain Dew is one of the fizziest, bubbliest drinks on the market, perfect for creating pressure quickly. He paused, pointing to the two beakers he had set up earlier on the table, one filled with regular Mountain Dew, the other with his explosive formula. But what I made was not just Mountain Dew. It was a highly modified version, mixed with chemicals that I developed myself, unstable compounds that react violently to pressure and heat. I used Mountain Dew as the base because of its fizz, but the formula is far more dangerous than anything your factory produces. It was never intended for anyone to drink or even come near. Zach stepped forward, holding up the regular Mountain Dew bottle they had retrieved earlier.
This stuff is what you've been making. It's safe, it's just soda.
Exactly. What you produce is perfectly fine. This recall happened because someone found traces of my explosive Mountain Dew after the fight with Mr. Dugan. They didn't understand what it was, and they reported it, causing the panic you're seeing now. But the truth is, my formula has nothing to do with what comes out of your factory. He moved to the second beaker where his explosive version of Mountain Dew sat, glowing slightly green and bubbling ominously. This is my formula. I never showed this to anyone outside my small group of friends, Colton, Zach, and Chris. We used it in the fight against Mr. Dugan, and afterward I thought I had cleaned up all the remnants. But clearly some traces remained, and that's what caused the confusion. One of the employees, an older man standing near the front, raised an eyebrow.
So you're telling us this whole recall is because of a mistake someone made after finding your weapon?
That's exactly right. The recall is based on a misunderstanding. The Mountain Dew you produce is safe. There's no explosive version in circulation. It was never part of the production line. The only reason it's being pulled from shelves is because someone thought they found something dangerous when, in reality, all they found were remnants of my own creation. The employees whispered amongst themselves, clearly intrigued but still unsure. Sensing the moment needed more impact, Mr. Rence turned back to his experiment. "Let me show you the difference." He pulled out a syringe filled with a reactive chemical and injected a small amount into the beaker of regular Mountain Dew. The drink fizzed, bubbled slightly, and then settled back into its normal state. Just a carbonated soda. This is what you've been making, safe, drinkable soda. Then he turned to the second beaker, the one containing his explosive Mountain Dew formula. He injected the same chemical, and instantly the liquid inside began to swirl violently. It bubbled and frothed, glowing faintly green as it gave off a low, unsettling hiss. The employees took a step back as the reaction intensified, though Mr. Rence had contained it safely in the beaker. And this is my creation. Dangerous, unstable, and never meant for anyone to drink. This is what caused the panic. But it's not what you've been making. The employees stared at the two beakers, the difference now clear as day. The regular Mountain Dew sat calmly while the explosive version continued to churn violently in its container. This factory had nothing to do with the explosive Mountain Dew. It was all me, a mistake that I'm here to fix. If we can get the word out, if we can explain that the recall was unnecessary, then we can stop the panic and get things back to normal. The room fell silent as the employees processed everything they had just seen and heard. One by one they began to nod, realizing that the recall had been based on a misunderstanding and that the Mountain Dew they produced had always been safe. The same employee who had questioned Mr. Rence earlier stepped forward again, her face serious but understanding.
You're saying we've been pulling our product off the shelves for nothing?
Yes, the Mountain Dew you've been making is perfectly safe. And if we can get this information to the right people, we can stop the recall and end this once and for all. The employee looked at her coworkers, then back at Mr. Rence.
All right, we'll help spread the word, but you better be right about this.
Thank you, I promise you this will set things right. The employees began talking among themselves, clearly ready to help push back against the unnecessary recall. The scene shifted to the dimly lit confines of a high-security prison. Inside one of the solitary cells, the notorious Mr. Dugan sat on a metal bench, his face shadowed by the flickering overhead light. His orange jumpsuit hung loosely on his frame, but the raw anger and malevolence in his eyes were as sharp as ever. His fingers drummed against the steel bench, the only sound in the quiet, eerie cell. Outside the thick bars, a prison guard approached, tapping on the door. "Dugan, you've got a visitor. Don't know why anyone would want to see you." Mr. Dugan raised his head, sneering.
Who could possibly be stupid enough to come all the way here?
A familiar figure stepped through the door. It was the guard, the same one who had been tied up in the trunk of Mr. Rence's van, snot-covered and humiliated. He looked disheveled, clearly rattled from his failed mission, but there was still a hint of defiance in his eyes as he stood before Mr. Dugan. Mr. Dugan's sneer dropped, replaced by a twisted grin.
One of my loyal idiots. To what do I owe this visit? I've been locked up, bored out of my mind, and you finally show up. Well, speak.
The prison guard shifted uncomfortably but stepped closer, lowering his voice as he spoke. "I came to tell you that I tried to avenge you, Mr. Dugan." Dugan raised an eyebrow, leaning forward.
Avenge me, huh? You actually went through with it, so what? Spit it out.
The guard hesitated, his confidence wavering. I tried to strike fear in the world. I wanted to make them afraid of something ridiculous, something they would never expect, Mountain Dew. I thought it would be a way to hit back at Mr. Rence for what he did, for blowing you off the roof. I wanted to get him back for humiliating you. At the mention of Mountain Dew, Mr. Dugan's expression soured, his eyes narrowing dangerously.
Mountain Dew?
The guard swallowed hard but pressed on. I made people believe the drink was dangerous. I got it recalled, thinking I could turn the public against Mr. Rence by linking his explosive version of Mountain Dew with the regular stuff. It was perfect. I had people scared. I had the world doubting the safety of their favorite drink. Mr. Dugan's eyes darkened and he stood up slowly, the steel bench scraping against the floor as he moved.
And?
The guard's voice faltered. But I failed. Rence and his group, they figured it out. They stopped the recall. They proved it wasn't dangerous. The plan fell apart. There was a long, tense silence as Mr. Dugan stared at the guard, his chest rising and falling with suppressed rage, his lip curled, and his voice dropped to a deadly whisper.
You absolute moron.
The guard flinched, his eyes darting nervously. I tried, Mr. Dugan. I thought...
Thought? You thought you'd get back at Rence by making people scared of Mountain Dew? That's the best you could come up with?
He spat the words, his hands balling into fists.
You were supposed to strike fear into the world, to send a message, and you chose soda. What are you, a clown?
The guard took a step back, his voice trembling. It made sense at the time. I thought it would spread fear.
Fear? The only thing you've done is make yourself look like an idiot. You think Rence is afraid of you now? You think anyone is afraid of you? No, all you've done is get caught by a bunch of nobodies and get yourself tied up in the back of a van. You are a disgrace.
The guard's face paled, his shoulders slumping under the weight of Dugan's words. I was trying to honor your legacy, to carry on your work.
Honor my legacy? You've done nothing but tarnish it. I took over the White House. I made murder legal. I had the entire country in chaos. And you? You played around with soda recalls.
The guard stammered. I thought it was the best way to...
Shut up.
Dugan shouted, cutting him off. His voice echoed in the small cell, seething with rage.
You thought wrong. You were supposed to be my loyal guard. And you've done nothing but embarrass yourself, and me. You want revenge on Rence? You want to make a real impact? You don't do it by playing with soft drinks, you idiot.
The guard stood there, stunned and humiliated, unable to respond. Mr. Dugan paced the cell like a caged animal, his fury barely contained.
I should have known better than to trust a fool like you. You failed me, and now you come crawling back here expecting me to do what? Pat you on the head for a job well done? Get out of my sight before I lose what little patience I have left.
The guard hesitated for a moment, but Dugan's cold, furious glare left no room for argument. He quickly turned and exited the cell, the door clanging shut behind him. As the guard disappeared from sight, Mr. Dugan stood in the center of his cell, his chest heaving with anger.
You think you can stop me with some soda recall? Rence might have won this round, but I'm not finished. Not by a long shot.
He sat back down on the steel bench, his mind already churning with thoughts of revenge, his anger fueling whatever dark plan he would come up with next. Rence and his group had stopped him once, but they wouldn't be so lucky the next time.